Navigating an SAP transformation? We get it. By day, we work hands-on with people like you across the globe. By night, we share what actually works. Welcome to Transformation Every Day with Alexander Greb and Johannes Langguth, where your complex transformation becomes clear, actionable, and achievable.
Welcome everybody. My name is Alexander Greb. I'm a consulting director at CBS Corporate Business Solutions, and you're listening to Transformation Every Day, expert insights and stories on SAP and beyond. Today we are joined by one of the most prominent faces at SAP, Jan Gilg, member of SAP's Extended Board, Chief Revenue Officer for SAP's Business Suite, and Head of SAP Americas. I have the pleasure to know Jan for many years, and he has worn many hats at SAP, from leading product and cloud ERP to now steering one of SAP's biggest regions. In our conversation, we talk about his journey, how that experience helps him to truly understand customers, and what transformation really looks like across Americas and everyone else on the globe. We'll also explore how SAP's role in the customer success is evolving, the unique opportunities and challenges in the US and Latin America, why innovation and standardization are finally walking hand in hand, and yes, a little talk about football, New York, and why Jan never really got into baseball. This is a great conversation about leadership, mindset, and what it takes to make transformation happen every single day. I'm Alexander Greb, and this is Transformation Every Day with Jan Gilg. Some words concerning your onboarding, Jan. I think your first days were quite easy for you. You spent a wonderful day at the Super Bowl. How was that experience?
Yeah, no, that was a great start actually into the new role. It was the first time for me also to visit the Super Bowl. But, I've been living here in the US for quite some time, since 2008, and got into American football then also pretty early on. So I have been following American football also during my time in Germany then. And I was actually glad to start the new role, actually with such a highlight event. So that was really cool in New Orleans this year.
And why football, not baseball?
And why not basketball, right?
I do like basketball a lot, actually. We have the New York Knicks here in New York, and they're basically Madison Square Garden is right next to where our office is. So I've seen a couple of games there. American football, I mean, I'm a big soccer fan growing up in Germany, so that's closer, I would say, than baseball to my heart. So therefore, I have to admit, I never really gotten into baseball so much, but American football I really liked from the beginning. A lot of action.
That's true, definitely. And as you may probably have heard, we have Jan Gilg in the podcast, which is a great pleasure. Chief Revenue Officer and Head of SAP Americas, also member of the Extended Board. And last but not least, Johannes is also back with us. Great to have you.
Happy to be back.
Awesome. And we are talking about Americas, about Jan's new role, what the business suite is up to. And you have, let's say, a twin role now, basically. You're responsible for SAP Americas and your Chief Revenue Officer of the business suite. Let's ask a stupid question first. How does it fit together?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I do have global responsibility for the revenue, actually, for SAP, together with Manos Raptopoulos. And so we split our responsibility then, of course, by region. So I run the Americas. He has the other three major regions that we have at SAP. And then we share global responsibility, which is the business suite, our corporate business, the industry business, and so on. So you could say we co-lead customer success for SAP, and then specifically we oversee the regions. And for me, it's of course the Americas, and that has been, kind of a main focus since the beginning of the year, when we actually merged also Latin America and North America into one super region, if you will. which is of course geographically extremely large. So therefore, certainly a lot to do, and that's why I have then also a leader for Latin America, and then I have leaders here in North America. So I'm not doing this all by myself, but of course, a big focus for me is to be in the region as well. And since I moved back to the US and are now based out of New York, that works very well.
At one time in your career, you were also responsible for the, let's call it, the application landscape at SAP itself, which is, I think, quite a challenging task by itself. How did this kind of feeling of the pain of yourself, like having to introduce applications, having to manage landscape and so on, how did they prepare you for your role that you have now, talking with customers who are now in the same situations?
Yeah, I think it is interesting that I have the opportunity now to do this go-to-market role coming from the product world, as you said. And the last 6 years, I've overseen our cloud ERP portfolio, so as a chief product officer for S4HANA, but also our finance and supply chain portfolio and some of our industry solutions. So I think it's good, and it demonstrates also that we are going back, I would say, to really leading with our products and how they fit together. What's the value proposition of the products? What are the outcomes that they can drive for our customers? And being able to speak about that still on a high level, of course, but it's beneficial and it resonates very well with our customers. And then, of course, at the end of the day, somebody needs to then also sell those products and the solutions. But we have a lot of very experienced sellers also in the markets, in the market units, and so on. So my main focus is really more to bring back that kind of product mindset and product-led culture into SAP. I think it helps, to have that background. I also spent a couple of years in IT internally here at SAP, so also it helps that I'm kind of able to put myself into the shoes of our customers and understand what it means to implement our solutions and also run them in the cloud now, and having those kind of heterogeneous cloud landscapes out there. So all that resonates pretty well with our customers at the end of the day. So I thought, and that's why when Christian Klein initially asked me if I could see myself doing this role, I thought actually it's good. And it is definitely helpful to have seen all different sides of our business and being able to speak to the products, because at the end we are a product company.
Looking at your former role, being responsible for the product, and now focusing on Americas, what are like the biggest opportunities that you see in America at the moment?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting, obviously coming from Europe or being a European company, and especially in Germany, we're almost like a default there, right? So they have a very large market share, and the largest German customers and also European customers, they all run SAP, often wall to wall. And here in the Americas, of course, there's a different level of competition. There's all of our US competitors, they sit here, it's their home market. So our market share is comparably small here in the Americas. Nevertheless, it's our largest region, and that already shows you the big potential that we have here and the opportunity to grow our market share, which is not necessarily only in the very large customers. We are also represented here in the very large US customers. There we do have certainly opportunity to grow the share of wallet, to basically increase our footprint, if you will. Often we are very strong in ERP, finance, but now also then pushing into procurement, supply chain, CX, HCM. So that's one big opportunity, and then really gaining market share by adding new logos, which often comes from the mid-market or upper mid-market, and here in the US specifically, but also in Latin America, there's many very fast-growing companies, the big ones of tomorrow, so to speak. And of course, you need to be in there pretty early on, and that's one big focus area for us here in the Americas.
Do you see any differences in the conversation that you're having in contrast to Europe, for example? Because there are so many stereotypes out there. Like the Europeans, they are so in love with their architecture, while the US guys, they mainly are interested about the KPIs, which results in implementation. How do you perceive that?
I think it's true that a lot of the technology adoption, it usually starts here in the Americas because a lot of innovation is coming from here. So we've seen also cloud adoption here much earlier than in Europe and specifically in Germany. Maybe a little bit less concerns about data, privacy, data residency, and so on. But also we see that now with AI, that companies really jump on this and want to try it out and, kind of want to try it out first and then figure out, all those things to regulate it and control it. Often I feel in Europe, we have the mentality to regulate first and be concerned about things. And only if the concerns are gone, we actually start trying things out. And so that's definitely different here. And therefore, of course, customers are absolutely not only willing to then leverage those technologies, but they expect also software vendors to be present and, kind of offer capabilities that they can use and hopefully help them. So I think there's a lot of this willingness. On the other side, especially in AI, we do see that many customers have now tried over the last couple of years many different things and haven't achieved the outcomes yet that they were hoping for, when we look into productivity increases and so on. And so we do see a little bit a comeback towards packaged software and the question, okay, what do you have as part of your application set? Because it's not only the technology, which is quite exciting, but in the enterprise context, there's many aspects that are equally important for American companies than it is for European companies. How do you make sure data doesn't leak or confidential data doesn't leak in the public domain? How do we make sure that recommendations that AI provides, they can be traceable? Why have that been made? Is this reliable information or recommendations? Because many of those decisions that companies have to make in this context, they are quite big. So there's sometimes $1 million decisions that they make based on kind of recommendations in the system. So those kind of aspects, then companies realize, it's really hard to build this custom on our own, even though the technology is certainly there, but it just requires more than just technology. And that's where they are coming to companies like SAP and ask, okay, so how did you solve that, and what's available as part of your ERP solution, as part of your line of business solutions, and maybe let's leverage that.
Do you see like industry specifics here, or is it like a general theming across the entire region or regions, I should say, considering Latin America?
Yeah. No, we do see definitely different industry flavors, so to speak, and different levels of maturity. And I believe you also see that industries that embrace that technology or have embraced it early on, they do see already first outcomes there. I've just been at the utilities conference a couple of weeks ago here in Denver. And utility has always been an industry where there's tons of data, right? So they started early on with smart meters, and they collected this data from the end customers, and that can really help them then to provide a better service, to create transparency, help consumers actually also save energy and act more sustainable, and of course then at the end of the day monetize that as well. And in the past, this was always almost like, remember when big data came up, everybody collected this data and threw it into a data lake, but then you saw very little insights coming out of it and a lot of struggle to operationalize that. Yeah, what to make with it. And that is changing now with AI, I feel. So now actually those use cases, which we talked about years ago already, like smart meter analytics and stuff like that, they become more the reality. And also then to take this into action again, not only to get the insight, but actually then execute on those insights and do something with it. And that's where the system of records and the business software comes into play again. And so this closed loop is happening now. And we see that especially in those industries, as they start to adopt it, there are definitely benefits to be seen. And then, of course, you have industries that are more cautious, regulated, even though utility is regulated too, but especially public sector and so on. It just takes longer, but everybody is looking into it and wants to have access to it as well, because everybody has the pressure on productivity now and on operational efficiency. And there's this big promise of AI now to help there or solve that, or at least allow to leapfrog in the space. So therefore, we see across industry a very high level of interest. But of course, you always have early adopters that frankly also implemented this already years ago and looked into it, like retail, for example, everything that's customer facing. They have used artificial intelligence for years, but it becomes easier now with the new set of technology with Gen AI and then also agentic AI. Much more easy than in the past years where it was more machine learning based, classic AI with a lot of model training, more individual services heavy as well. So therefore, we definitely see adoption across industry.
Like you said, in Germany, we tend to play in our old ballpark. Yeah, so our installed base is considerably higher. And with installed bases, of course, the discussion in the why, what, how parameters, you talk heavily about the how, because they have to move from their existing landscapes to something considerably different, but they want to keep their data and so on. With more net new names in the US, when you start about a fresh start with a new application, probably you talk more about the what and the why. So the discussion tend to center more about innovation and so on. Do you feel a similar shift? Like it's now for you possible to speak easier about innovation than maybe in the past?
I think it becomes much more of an innovation discussion, even for our install base. Remember when 2015 we started with S4 as the next generation of ERP. And at the beginning, it was perceived almost like, there's kind of an end of maintenance for ECC, and now this is the next generation, and it was a very technical discussion. Let's get there. Let's see how quickly we can get there, and just to stay on a platform that's modern and compliant at the end of the day. And then, there was a lot of disruption that followed, starting with COVID and many things that happened, and companies realized the level of disruption is not going to get less. So therefore, it became clear that this is an opportunity to not only look now into technical modernization, but really how to leverage innovative technology to do things differently than they used to do it before. And if you think about it, especially in B2B and with ERP, sometimes companies run this for 15, 20 years. And then the question is, do you still run your business like you did 15, 20 years ago? And do you believe this will also carry you into the next 10, 15 years? And while a system might be running and it's very robust, and we see this even with mainframe systems, there's still some around. But the reality is you lose the agility and you lose the ability to adjust to an environment that has changed drastically and continues to change drastically. And that's where the innovation discussion comes in, and much more of a connection between a technical modernization and a business transformation. And that is pretty much what we have been addressing with RISE, with our install base, but also with net new. With net new, it's a little bit easier because there's no legacy, right? So they know they have to start fresh, and when starting fresh, you of course then naturally take a look into, okay, maybe I have to do things differently to run better than before. But also in our install base, I have to say this is more and more front and center of the discussion.
You mentioned also that there is a bigger appetite now for packaged solutions, and I think SAP goes exactly in this direction with the business suite, having different personas, integrated processes. Like looking in the market right now, what are kind of the biggest asks that you get from a business suite perspective? What are the most demanded personas that you get in Americas?
So I still think the CIO is a super important persona because technology, again, is driving a lot of the business transformation. Right? It's an enabler. And with AI now, even more so than before. So the the CIO is super important, and the role of the CIO has also changed. In my mind, often it's a combined role now with a digital transformation officer or chief digital officer, or however you want to call it. So moving closer to the business, which makes sense. And then, of course, you have other functions that are cross by nature, like the COO often has responsibility for supply chain as well. Supply chain, I've seen getting elevated quite a bit in the last couple of years. And they had, like 10 years ago, often struggled to have a seat on the table, even on the kind of the board table, which has changed a lot now, because supply chain has become so critical, but also vulnerable. And we have seen those vulnerabilities over the last couple of years very clearly. So those roles are important. And then the CFO, of course, because at the end of the day, those are often the people that sign the check, and they are also extremely interested in operational efficiencies and how technology can help there. So I would say those are really the main personas that we are also trying to address. But nowadays, it's also extremely difficult to sell packaged software kind of against the line of business, so to speak. So if you don't have at least the buy-in of a chief procurement officer or chief HR officer, it's really hard to push that through. So that's why we are trying to also then illustrate, hey, there's something in it for you. And even though sometimes those are not necessarily the final decision makers, it is important to get everybody on board, other than only the CIO, I would say. So that's why you have seen us now speak more and more about the various roles in an enterprise, executive level roles, and how it all plays together. I think that is also important because companies realize, the decisions in isolation usually doesn't happen, and every decision has a huge impact upstream and downstream. And of course, the more you can connect the dots, the better it is.
Are there some favorite, let's call it, use cases or success stories you had already with those personas in the realm of AI, cloud, etc., that you prefer or most favorably like to quote when asking for, like, hey, what can we achieve in that areas? Hi there. Quick break for a short message before we go right back to the episode. Enjoying the insights and stories on transformation every day? Want to make sure you never miss an episode packed with practical tips and best practices from the SAP world, featuring conversations with some of the most interesting people in the SAP universe? Then hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, whether it is Apple, Spotify, or any other you use. And if our podcast brings you value, we would be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us. Thanks so much, and happy listening.
I mean, there's a bunch of use cases, like I said, in all of the functional domains. I mean, in finance, for instance, a lot of this is about operational efficiencies and run processes with less people and less manual steps, from classic collection processes, accounts receivables, then reconciliation tasks, bringing together POs and invoices, and can kind of also then accruals. Those kind of operational tasks that are happening in companies, often shared service centers are used for that, and that is of course also prime use case which we have seen customers jump on to reduce the amount of manual labor needed in those shared services center, because software can automate especially things like collection or dispute management and so on. So those are always kind of, I would say, the lower hanging fruits that companies target. And then where the money is typically in operations and supply chain. So looking into supply chain planning all the way to supply chain execution when it comes to maintenance tasks, predictive maintenance, also topics that are around for quite some time, which have now seen another uptake based on the technology that's available. It's things like visual inspection to also have the machine then really analyze and find defects very early in the manufacturing process, all the way to the predictive maintenance. Those are all cases that add a lot of value. I just had Cirque du Soleil here in a CIO event a couple of weeks ago. And it's an interesting company, and probably everybody knows about them, but nobody knows how much of a logistical effort it is to run those shows across different continents at the same quality, so to speak. And most of the artists, they are contractors, and that poses a lot of different questions when it comes to even simple things like travel and expense management, kind of booking the hotel rooms and insuring those people. So there you see a lot of connectivity between travel and expense, finance, and the HR side of the house. So they have basically introduced the business suite to run those end-to-end processes seamlessly, to really manage this kind of operation very efficiently. And then, of course, they started to build respective AI cases on top to, again, drive productivity gains here, make this as seamless as possible. Obviously, those kind of shows, they have a very tight margin profile. You have to make sure you know which location to book, at what point in time, what kind of program to set up, which artists to deploy there, and so on. So that's all things where technology can help already today very significantly, and where we see more and more of our customers actually take advantage of the built-in capabilities that we have.
I mean, we touched based on this earlier, right? That the time of, I would say, micro optimization is over, where you just optimize a specific business domain, but in a totality that maybe is not fully optimal on the enterprise level. Given your experience on the product side, internal IT, and now with customer success, what kind of recommendation would you give companies that want to move in the direction of digital transformation in the year of 2025, that start now? What should they do? What's the best way to start things here?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's really important to start it from the business process perspective, not from a technology side. So really having a look into, am I running, my company in the best possible way, and what are best practices out there? And we have been always talking about best practices at SAP because of the large install base that we have, and the visibility across all industries across the globe. What makes this now even better in my mind is that we have now access to a lot of the data, because companies run their solutions in the cloud. Before, it was often, you had to manually, even based on surveys, collect this kind of information, was always a little outdated. Nowadays, we see a lot of our customers that are actually giving us the consensus to use the data in an anonymized and an aggregated way. And with that, we can, of course, then see, what is a best practice and how are best practices evolving, maybe by industry, by geography, and so on. So that is something where we can bring a lot to the table, and then companies should start basically on this process level, and then figure out, and that's also a very old discussion, but it's very relevant again, what is core, what is context in our processes, and what is the commodity, and where do I really differentiate and create value for my stakeholders, and don't invest unnecessarily or change processes that are commodity anyway. So we see a lot of shift towards standardization of processes, and that's what I would also recommend. Really try to reduce the deviation that you have for processes that don't add value. And that also means then often in the ERP context, getting rid of customization that's not necessary, really kind of stripping it more down to the core, running as standard as possible, and then focus investment on areas which really differentiate. And that is actually where platform can be used, where technology like AI can be used to build out things that represent more the secret sauce of a company, rather than something that is anyway not creating value. And that, of course, requires that those projects are run business-driven, so with a top-down mandate. I think that is really important to secure top-down mandate all the way from the CEO, ideally, and make this a business transformation rather than a technology transformation. Then, of course, connect it. So show that how technology can enable this kind of transformation.
Some of the strong enablers of business improvements are then again, unfortunately, on the IT side with topics like clean core, intelligent data use, and so on, having a strong focus, of course. This kind of, let's say, legacy thinking, what often led to this necessity to talk about these topics is, of course, rooted in decade-long usage of systems without really looking into the business cause for them, and just, let's say, like optimizing them mostly on the technological side. To bring that business spin back into the discussion, what are the recommendations that you give business users?
I think again it is important to look after the value, the outcome, and this is something, and I've even told that to my product teams when I was on the product side. When you build software, even always think about what is the outcome you want to create for a customer. How does it make the life of an end user better? How do they, can get their job done in half the time that they get it done today? And that needs to be front and center of the discussion from my perspective. And there is also where we can help with tooling like Signavio, on the one hand side to look into business processes, understand how they run today, but then also have clear measurable KPIs like they say it's outstanding or whatever KPI you want to pick, and then figure out, okay, how can I have an impact on that? And that drives then the business case. And of course, it's a difficult discussion sometimes because it's you have to have then a baseline in place, and you have to believe that this is going to happen. But it gives you a very different discussion to begin with, and that is the important thing, to really even be able to or be open to have that discussion. And then if it's this value or that value, it doesn't even matter so much at the end. It's rather the fact that you want to focus on driving an outcome and start measuring it. And measurement has always been an issue in my mind in the on-premise world, because it's for us impossible to see how a customer uses a system. And even for the customers, they run it all in isolation. Some did some measurements, but often, it just ran. and now you have the data available to make the comparisons, and there's much more transparency. And then also for us, of course, looking into the usage data, much more insights that we can drive also for our development team, to make sure we are building capabilities that are actually needed and that customers want and that do drive outcome, but then also for our customers to see how are they doing and how is it also changing. Especially over time, often you might run something very vanilla and standard, and 6 months later, 12 months later, you already have like 10 variants. And making sure that you consistently monitor that and kind of embrace this mindset of continuous improvement. I think that is a big change in the SAP context compared to what was happening the last 10, 20 years.
I mean, SAP, I should say we, because I'm an SAP employee, we're moving not just the product side forward, but also the engagement side. Say we change our engagement model now that customers moving to the cloud, customers start adopting the business suite. Could you elaborate a little bit on the evolved engagement model that we as SAP provide to customers now?
Yeah, I mean, that has, like you said, fundamentally changed. I feel almost it was very Tayloristic in the on-premise times. You would have development, you develop a piece of software, you hand it over or you sell it to the customer, and then you're completely out of the game. Then you have a partner that implements the software, and then maybe you get a support ticket at some point in time after the customer is live, often much later than when the actual sale happened. And now it's really flipped towards a mindset of customer success, I would say, which makes the customer success front and center of everything we do. And that starts with development and focus on adoption and usage to make sure the customer uses actually the things that we build, and then goes all the way to services to make sure there is a successful implementation, hopefully a fast implementation, according to standard processes, best practice, as I mentioned before, and then also the go live is basically the starting point. That's not the end point. So we don't celebrate necessarily a go live anymore because it's the beginning of the journey. And then you work with the customer to drive adoption of the product, get more users to use the system, get more users to use more functionality in the system. And that's where also the role of our services organization is changing drastically to become a kind of this enabler of adoption for our customers. And in customer success, we have customer success managers, that help drive adoption of our public cloud solution. So we have much more skin in the game along the entire customer value journey than ever before, because it doesn't end. And we are also moving away from those, kind of upfront. We're doing a deal, and then a few years later you come back in and do another deal. It is also, when you're on a SaaS platform, the platform continues to evolve, and you want customers to adopt new innovation. And of course, there is then monetization of this innovation. But again, you can also articulate the outcome of it. And if customers see value, then they're also willing to spend money. And that requires a very different mindset also when it comes to selling the solution. It's more of we always distinguish the hunters and the farmers, and the farming motion has become much, much more front and center of what we're doing, especially with our install base, as we are trying to show them the value of more and more line of business capabilities that we have and how that fits into their landscape. Under RISE, we are offering the enterprise architect, which is a pivotal role to help our customers understand, how all of this fits together in their existing enterprise architecture, how it's evolving, and also how to make all those SAP components that are much more modular than in the past work together, and how to adopt innovation like AI and business data cloud, and how to make sense of it and how to use it. So I feel it's fundamentally changed, and the short summary is really customer success has become front and center for us.
So when you look into this fundamental change that you mentioned, and it's, I think, becoming apparent for everybody who looks at SAP, what happened within the last 5 years, that there has been massive disruption and changes happening. You, of course, are not alone in the game. Partners, like you said, are there too. And of course, a major factor in the success of this change. Do you think that partners are in the speed of moving into that direction that SAP is doing up on speed? Are they on par, or do you see their strengths and still some points where they have to catch up more than they did in the last years?
Yeah, I mean, also there, it's a change. I think partners are more critical than ever. Yeah, so because also if I look into how are we supposed to scale, you got to scale through partners, especially when it's about winning new logos, scaling into the mid-market segment. So partners are extremely critical. So and we have different types of partners, right? Like resell partners, ISV partners that are independent software vendors, super important in my mind, because also here we are not going to rebuild everything that we used to have in on-premise. So there's many capabilities we probably shouldn't have built in the first place. But it's basically what we consider long tail. You have 100 customers, 200 customers using it. Those are ideal areas for partners to build, often industry-specific things. Now with AI, we see more and more of those satellite use cases. So that also means, on the one hand side, new partners are needed. So the ecosystem is growing more and more. Of course, also here, to figure out who are the new partners that bring the right mindset, the right technology expertise to the table. We see our traditional partners, also them. They are in a big transformation. If you look into our large GSSP partners, the service integrators, like an Accenture, Deloitte, and so on, also they are changing quite a bit, because the goal is not anymore to drive long projects and long upgrade projects and build as much custom code as possible, but rather, kind of help customers get up and running quickly, go live, and then again, also here, drive the adoption and really then build the customization where it's differentiating, and do that on top of the platform, decoupled from the core, do it with new technologies and so on. So I would say also our ecosystem is in quite a state of change, as they have to adopt into the new world, to the cloud-only world for SAP, and also then how to use this technology and how to complement the software that we are providing, and how to add value to those customers. So co-innovation is a super important topic. But I also feel that we do have a very strong partner ecosystem, and many partners that are willing to make the change. They will be super successful in the future. And as I said, I feel the ecosystem around SAP is rather growing now.
Since you're always talking about users who are caught in this kind of, let's say, change turmoil, with cloud, business now with fit to standard and so on, we quite often forget the consultants who are in the same role. They, for the last 20, 25 years, they were very technically focused and so on. Now they have to be value partners and so on. So this is, of course, very difficult for them too. If we would play Frankenstein now and you could build the perfect partner based on your challenges, on your needs in the American market, how would this partner company look like, and what would be the strategy?
Yeah, so such a company would probably have a lot of competencies across our entire business suite. So really deep knowledge across multiple functional domains, but then also be very savvy on technology. So being able to identify what are those white spaces, and ideally build out those white spaces to then go to market with us, help us generate demand in the first place, do the reselling across the entire suite. Often it's a landing motion with ERP, and then you expand into the line of business, have a holistic story, and then fill white spaces with extensions that are AI driven, on top of our platform, of course, on top of the business technology platform, leveraging our AI core and foundation. And so basically a combination almost of a reseller and implementation partner and an ISV, who's able to extend our solutions, and then of course have the ability to also be a partner then to their customers for life. So having customer success managers that help drive then the usage and the adoption of the solution, and continue to upsell into this customer. So that would be a perfect partner profile, I would say.
That sounds great. Jan, if we would give you in the town, or sorry, not in the town, in the city that you're working now, which is New York, the possibility, Times Square, the big billboard, and you get the possibility to get a message out there, what would be the message you would see on the billboard on Times Square?
Yeah, I would probably something around like our future is our customers' future, and only when they succeed do we succeed. And that's really the message around the customer success that I mentioned earlier, which has become our mantra. And in my mind, essential for any technology company at the end of the day. Only if a customer is happy with your software, which means is using it and even expanding the usage of the software and sees value in it, then they are a customer for life, and they're also willing to continue to invest. So in that regard, it's become much more positive for customers because they have more choice. And I think we see also different, kind of commercial models that are popping up, which are geared more towards I only use what I, or I only pay for what I use, and more outcome-driven models. And so at the end of the day, this would be really front and center, the customer success.
Great. Jan, if people, customers, consultants, SAP colleagues and so on want to experience you, what are the events on your timetable in the next months?
You just missed me at SAP Connect. So
unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, yes.
and that was the first time we brought all of our line of business events together into one, in the spirit of the SAP Business Suite, end to end. Very, very positive feedback there. And then, of course, I will be at Sapphire as every year, which is then only next year. TechEd. I won't make it to Berlin, unfortunately. So I'm staying here in the US for the fourth quarter.
Berlin is a great city. You should come one day.
I know. One of my favorite ones in Germany, actually. So I'm a little sad I couldn't make it. But I will primarily be here. I try to attend the SAP Now events, which I think are very positive always, because you get customers together from a specific market unit, so it's a more homogeneous group. Try to attend some of the industry events that are organized either through the user groups or whoever, and then the major SAP events, of course, like Sapphire and SAP Connect.
Awesome. Jan, thank you very much for taking your time for this fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Jan.
Yes, thanks for having me.
We're looking forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.